Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are putting on our detective hats to investigate a massive interpretive debate surrounding one of the most famous passages in human history, the opening chapters of ancient Genesis. We're going to dive into a really fascinating source document that performs a rigorous forensic textual investigation on Genesis 1 and 2. Basically, it challenges some incredibly popular modern interpretations by focusing strictly on the grammar itself.
Okay, let's just jump right in, because our source material starts out of the gate with this flashing red warning regarding the cosmic temple theory of creation. If you aren't familiar with it, this is the theory that the cosmos in Genesis is actually being depicted as a divine temple. But our text issues a severe alert here, arguing that this specific reading introduces some major interpretive failures. It's a pretty bold claim, so we're going to unpack exactly why the source argues this.
Here is our roadmap for this textual investigation. First, the cosmic temple debate. Second, rules of interpretation. Third, the grammatical evidence. Fourth, contextual and cultural proof. And finally, number 5, the final verdict.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the cosmic temple debate.
So, the core issue we're looking at is evaluating the proposition that Genesis 1 and 2 depict the universe as a divine temple. This is that popular cosmic temple framework. It basically suggests that God's rest on the seventh day is actually a designation for his reign, and humanity's role is to act as representatives in this cosmic sanctuary. But our source pushes back hard. It argues that we actually need to strip away this external theological overlay completely. Instead, the meaning has to be fixed strictly by the historical grammar. We have to look at what is literally written on the page rather than relying on later theological usage to tell us what it means.
That brings us to Section 2, Rules of Interpretation.
Look, if we're going to do a proper forensic investigation here, we absolutely have to establish some unbreakable rules for reading ancient text. You can't just read whatever you want into a historical document, right? First up, we have to watch out for something called hermeneutical switching. Basically, that's changing the rules of interpretation mid-game. It's when a reader shifts from a literal grammatical reading to a highly thematic or allegorical reading right in the middle of the text. You're essentially forcing a specific theme onto words that just don't naturally support it.
We also really need to avoid what's called systematic imposition. This means importing an external and usually much later theological or allegorical framework backward into an earlier historical text where those ideas just don't exist yet. Think of it like this. It's like reading the rules of baseball into a text written way before baseball was even invented, just because you happen to see the word pitch.
So, how do we avoid those critical failures? Well, our governing principles dictate a very strict order of operations. First, we must read local before canonical. That simply means the immediate words on the page matter more than the whole library of books combined. Second, contextual before systematic, meaning the immediate paragraph you're reading takes priority over some broad, overarching theology. Basically, we have to draw out the text's actual meaning before we even attempt to apply theology to it. Let's see how that works in practice in Section 3, the grammatical evidence. This is where things get really fascinating. When you look at the actual hard evidence, strictly analyzing the syntax of Genesis 1:1 through 2:3, what do you find? Well, if this text were truly intended to depict a temple, we'd obviously expect to see vocabulary like shrine or priest or rain. But a strict analysis of the actual grammar yields absolutely none of that. Instead, we get strictly cosmological and terrestrial terms. Words like heaven, earth, deep, waters, firmament, and dry land. The literal reference here are entirely physical elements, not temple architecture. And this brilliantly illustrates the point about God's rest. The text explicitly states, "He rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made." The syntax ties the word rested strictly to the cessation of labor, literally, the ending of the work he made. It is absolutely not tied to assuming a throne or commencing some sort of cosmic reign. The historical grammar insists that we cannot assume a theological meaning for the word rest when the local words simply don't support it. Furthermore, let's look at the grammar surrounding humanity's role. The active imperatives given here are, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. These words clearly establish functional rulership over physical creation, stuff like the fish of the sea and the fowl of the air. Notice what's missing? This specific phrasing is completely devoid of any linguistic connection to priestly duties or temple liturgy. It's entirely about physical governance. Moving right along to Section 4, Contextual and Cultural Proof. Now, because grammar gives us the form, but context establishes the actual meaning, the immediate context holds the absolute highest interpretive authority. And the argument flow here proceeds very systematically. Step 1, forming and categorizing physical habitats, like the sky, sea, and dry land. Step 2, filling those exact habitats with biological inhabitants, lights, birds, fish, and animals. And step 3, the complete cessation of that creative work on the seventh day. The rhetorical purpose here is pretty clear. It's demonstrating the ordering of chaos into a functional, habitable ecosystem, not a sanctuary.
Because of this, the source warns of a massive danger called affinity inflation. This happens when interpreters take later cultural ideas, like say, ancient Near Eastern temple inaugurations that might conceptually mirror creation motifs, and improperly force those ideas backward onto this primordial historical narrative. It basically treats a loose conceptual overlay as if the text explicitly asserts it, which, as we've seen, it doesn't.
We can actually map this out using an affinity scale of textual connection. A level 1 connection is a direct, explicit reference. A level 3 connection is merely thematic or conceptual. The source argues that the temple idea is, at best, a weak level 3 thematic connection when compared to later biblical texts. But our governing rules? They strictly forbid elevating a level 3 thematic concept to override the explicit level 1 local grammar of physical creation and biological reproduction.
So, where does all this leave us? Let's jump to section 5, the final verdict.
What exactly does this text teach if it isn't the cosmic temple framework? Well, the source notes that theological synthesis is absolutely allowed, but it has to be derived directly from the text itself. When we do that, we actually reveal some incredibly legitimate doctrines. We see creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing. We see divine sovereignty over the physical universe. We see the imago Dei, endowing humanity with stewardship over the earth. And we see the Sabbath, based strictly on God's cessation from creative work. But what is noticeably lacking from this list? Any universe as temple doctrine.
Ultimately, excising this allegorical framework leaves us with some profound practical significance. Rather than humans merely representing God in some mystical cosmos temple, the text actually gives humanity a delegated, sovereign responsibility to steward a literal, physical ecosystem. It grounds the entire text in the actual physical reality we live in today.
It's honestly a fascinating look at how deeply grammar impacts our understanding of foundational literature. I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder as you go out and explore complex historical texts for yourself. When we read ancient texts, are we reading what is explicitly there, or are we just reading what our modern systems desperately want to see? Thanks for joining me on this textual investigation, and keep asking the hard questions.